Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The Whitmore mansion rose majestically from the hillside, its white columns and large windows overlooking a manicured park. Inside, everything exuded luxury: Persian rugs, glittering chandeliers, old master paintings. Yet, behind this perfect facade, a quiet sadness reigned. Emily Whitmore, James and Elizabeth's only daughter, had been paralyzed since the accident that left her trapped in an unresponsive body. 12 years old, confined to a wheelchair, her childhood dreams now reduced to blurred images of a world she could no longer explore. The doctors had done their job. All had failed. Despair had taken root in her parents' hearts, despite all their wealth. That day, as the light rain streaked the hall windows, a beggar appeared at the door. He was thin, dressed in rags, his hair disheveled and his weathered face told of a life of struggle. James Whitmore frowned. Who would dare enter his house without an invitation? Yet, before James could even say a word, the beggar looked up at him, calm and determined. "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." A heavy silence followed his words. Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. James took a step back in disbelief. His eyes, that of a seasoned businessman, searched for deception, for cunning. But the beggar's gaze, deep and assured, made something shiver inside him. Emily, sitting in her chair, felt a thrill of hope she hadn't known in years. Her eyes shone again. Maybe, just maybe, something incredible was about to happen. The beggar took a step forward, his soft but firm voice echoing through the hall. "I don't ask for anything in return, just your faith and patience. Let me try." James and Elizabeth exchanged a look, torn between skepticism and despair. And in that suspended moment, a fragile but real spark of hope began to glow in the Whitmore home. The next morning, the rain had stopped, giving way to a light mist that enveloped the Whitmore grounds. Emily sat by her bedroom window, watching the drops still cling to the branches of the trees. For the first time in years, a sense of hope filled her. A heavy footstep echoed in the hall. James, ever wary, had decided to welcome the beggar inside. Samuel Carter, dressed in rags but carrying an air of calm and dignity, entered without hesitation. James stood straight with his arms crossed. "You came forward yesterday with a very bold promise. Tell me why I should believe you." Samuel inclined his head slightly, without aggression. "Mr. Whitmore, I don't ask that you believe me immediately. I'm not looking for money or recognition. Only a chance to show Emily what I've learned to do in my life." Elizabeth entered behind her husband, her face marked by nights of worry. "James, maybe," she whispered, but James silenced her with a wave of his hand. Samuel knelt gently in front of Emily, without touching her. "Hello, Emily. My name is Samuel. I'd like you to give me a chance. I want you to feel life in your legs again." Emily looked at him, fascinated by the beggar's serenity. You can really make me walk," she stammered. Samuel smiled slightly. "I don't promise an immediate miracle. But if you trust me, and if your parents give me the time I need, you will feel life returning to your legs." James sighed, visibly annoyed but intrigued. "Very well, Samuel Carter. You may stay, but I warn you, if you gamble with my daughter's hopes, I will never forgive you." Samuel nodded, as if he fully understood the weight of this responsibility. "I have no intention of hurting her, sir. My goal is to heal, not to disappoint." Emily, feeling her heart beating faster than ever, smiled shyly. For the first time since her accident, she thought a different future was possible. The beggar stood up and gestured toward the garden. "Tomorrow we will begin our work. I will show you how to awaken the hidden strength in your body, Emily." James remained silent, torn between skepticism and curiosity. But something inside him told him that this meeting was only the beginning of a journey he would never forget. The next morning, the Whitmore house was eerily quiet. Emily stood by the window, her legs motionless, but her mind filled with a strange anticipation. Samuel, meanwhile, had prepared the space for the first session, a few rugs, a sturdy chair, and a small table with simple objects that only he understood. James and Elizabeth were gathered in the living room, anxious. James clutched his coffee mug as if his life depended on it. Elizabeth. I don't know if this is a good idea. This Samuel Carter, a beggar who claims to cure our daughter? He murmured, more to himself than to his wife. Elizabeth placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. James, I know, but look at Emily. Do you see that sparkle in her eyes? I haven't seen anything like it since the accident. Maybe. Before she finished, James sighed deeply. Maybe. But I refuse to be fooled. If this is a scam, I'll make him leave immediately. Meanwhile, Samuel was talking calmly to Emily. Your strength is there, Emily. It's always been there. I'm only going to help you awaken it. But you have to promise me one thing, you have to believe in yourself, even if it's difficult. Emily nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. I want to walk again. I really want to. Later that morning, James summoned Emily's doctors to observe Samuel and judge his supposed method. Dr. Harrison and Dr. Green, two renowned specialists, examined Emily's movements and exchanged skeptical glances. James, I don't see any scientific basis here. Dr. Harrison said, frowning. That's impossible, James. You're wasting your time and money, Dr. Green added. James, caught between the doctor's doubts and the hope shining in his daughter's eyes, felt his heart clench. He knew science couldn't explain everything, but he saw that Emily believed in Samuel. And for the first time in a long time, he considered the idea that a miracle might be possible. That night, Emily fell asleep with a strange sensation in her legs, as if they were shivering beneath her skin. Samuel sat at a distance in the living room, murmuring a silent prayer with his eyes closed. James and Elizabeth exchanged glances, each understanding that this first day marked the beginning of a journey that would change their lives forever. The sun was rising timidly over the large Whitmore mansion, casting a golden light through the vast windows of the living room, which had been transformed into a makeshift therapy room. Emily sat in her wheelchair, waiting for Samuel with a mixture of impatience and nervousness. Her fingers drummed lightly on the armrests, a sign that something inside her was bubbling after the beggar's reassuring words. Samuel entered, as usual, calm and confident. He wore neither watch nor fancy accessories. His mere presence seemed to impose a respectful silence, as if the entire room were holding its breath. Hello, Emily, he said softly. Today we will begin to awaken your inner strength. You must not be afraid. Emily nodded, her heart pounding. I don't want to fall, she whispered. Samuel knelt down in front of her and placed a light but firm hand on her arm. You won't fall, because I'll be there to guide your body. You just have to listen and believe in yourself. Then he gestured to the carpet spread out before them. Let's take it slow. Step 1, feel your legs. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and imagine your muscles waking up, wanting to move. Emily closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She felt a strange tingling in her legs, as if a gentle current was running through her sleeping muscles. Samuel whispered. Yes, there it is. Feel it. Every fiber of your body can awaken if you give it permission. James and Elizabeth watched from the doorway, silent and suspicious. James didn't want to get carried away, but he felt a strange shiver run down his spine. What if this beggar really did have a power that no science could explain? After several minutes of breathing and concentration, Samuel guided Emily to make a small movement with her toes. Emily did so tentatively, her eyes widening in surprise. See? Samuel said with a smile. Even the smallest movement is a step towards freedom. Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. Oh my God, she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. James, for his part, was trying to remain rational. Perhaps it's a nervous reflex, nothing more, he thought, but his heart refused to believe his own words. The session lasted several hours. Samuel combined touch, words, and encouragement, guiding Emily through gradual movements, almost imperceptible but real. Each small step forward was a miracle for the family. Emily felt a new warmth in her legs, an energy she hadn't experienced since the accident. At the end of the day, Emily collapsed into the chair, exhausted but happy. Thank you, Samuel. I feel something in my legs," she murmured. Samuel looked at her tenderly. This is the beginning, Emily. The road will be long, but every step, however small, is a step towards freedom. That first session was a turning point. For the first time in years, hope was reborn in the Whitmores' hearts. But James knew he had to remain vigilant. The doctor's skepticism and the fear of a scam still hovered over the house, like a silent shadow ready to strike at any moment. As the days passed, the routine of sessions with Samuel became a ritual in the Whitmore household. Every morning, Emily looked forward to it, and every night, she fell asleep with a smile of hope. Yet for James, patience had its limits. That morning, James watched Samuel and Emily from the living room. The beggar guided Emily with meticulous gentleness, encouraging her to move her legs, feel her muscles, breathe deeply. Emily, focused, followed his instructions, her face lit with a new light. James sighed, running a hand over his face. Elizabeth, it's been a week, and I still don't see any real progress. Maybe we're wasting our time and money. Elizabeth shook her head, her eyes fixed on their daughter. James, look at her expression, her face. She believes. And I believe there's some truth in what Samuel is doing. James gritted his teeth. I want tangible results, Elizabeth, not illusions. If this story is just a farce, I will never forgive it. Meanwhile, Emily had gotten up from her chair with Samuel's help, her legs shaky but real. She took a few uncertain steps across the carpet, supported by the beggar. Samuel looked at her with encouragement. All right, Emily. Keep going, one step at a time. Emily laughed, surprised by her own strength. I'm moving. I can move. James stepped forward in disbelief, his eyes wide. It's impossible, he murmured. Elizabeth, with tears in her eyes, ran to Emily and hugged her. My God, she stammered. It's true, you're walking, you're really walking. Samuel, still calm, placed a hand on James's shoulder. Mr. Whitmore, I warned you, the road is long, but every step forward is real. The important thing is faith, patience, and perseverance. James looked away, torn between skepticism and wonder. He knew he had to accept the obvious, but the businessman in him was still searching for a rational explanation. Yet, as he watched Emily take a few more steps, he felt his heart fill with an emotion he hadn't known in years, hope. That day marked a turning point. James's disbelief was slowly fading in the face of the reality of this emerging miracle. But Samuel knew that the road ahead would still be strewn with challenges, for what was happening would attract the attention, and sometimes the envy, of many people. Morning light streamed softly through the large windows of the Whitmore mansion, illuminating the living room turned training room. Emily, settled in her wheelchair, looked at Samuel with eyes shining with anticipation. Today would be different, she sensed. There was a peculiar energy in the air, as if fate itself were holding its breath. Samuel, calm but focused, approached her. Emily, today we're going to try something new. Your strength is ready. I want you to try getting up on your own, without my direct help. Emily frowned, her hands trembling on the arms of the chair. Can I do it? What if I fall? Samuel smiled softly. You're ready. And even if you fall, I'll be there to help you get back up. But believe in yourself. That's the most important thing. James and Elizabeth watched from the doorway, anxious and impatient. James couldn't help but clench his fists, a mixture of worry and hope. Elizabeth, if she falls. He whispered, but his voice betrayed an emotion he didn't want to show. Emily took a deep breath. She concentrated, her legs quivering with newfound energy. With immense effort and total concentration, she planted her feet on the ground and slowly stood up, unsteady but upright. Samuel stayed beside her, arms outstretched, ready to intervene. Then something extraordinary happened. Emily took a few steps, hesitant at first, then more confident. Her laughter burst into the room, pure and joyful. "I'm walking. I'm really walking," she cried, her eyes shining with tears. Elizabeth ran towards her, hugging her. My God," she sobbed. "Emily, it's incredible, you're walking." James, incredulous but overcome with emotion, dropped his tie and stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "Emily, it's a miracle," he whispered, his voice trembling. Samuel, calm and modest, placed a hand on James's shoulder. "The miracle isn't just in his legs, Mr. Whitmore. It's in his inner strength. We've only awakened what has been sleeping for too long." Emily took a few more steps, her smile bright, her eyes full of life. For the first time since the accident, she felt whole, free. James and Elizabeth looked at each other, unable to contain their happiness. Wealth, power, and money had never produced an emotion as pure as the one they felt seeing their daughter finally walk. Samuel quietly withdrew to a corner, observing the scene with quiet satisfaction. He knew that this first miracle was only the beginning of a longer and more difficult journey. But today, he had given an entire family a precious gift, hope. News of the miracle spread quickly, first through the neighborhood, then through the local media. A simple article about a paralyzed little girl who walks thanks to a mysterious beggar attracted national attention. Reporters crowded outside the Whitmore home, cameras on their shoulders and notepads in hand, trying to capture every word, every gesture. James Whitmore, once master of his life and reputation, suddenly felt vulnerable. He watched the scene from his bedroom balcony, his face tense. "Elizabeth, we have no control over anything anymore. If this story becomes a scandal, our reputation, our privacy, everything will be exposed." Elizabeth, at James's side, placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "James, look at Emily. She's happy. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks." But the challenges didn't just come from outside. Some jealous or skeptical doctors and specialists began to question Samuel's methods. Criticisms appeared in newspapers, a fraud disguised as a miracle, or unscientific methods for a serious medical problem. Samuel, undaunted, continued his sessions with Emily as if nothing could touch him. He knew that fear and doubt were part of the journey. One morning, Emily, anxious, asked, "Samuel, why do people say you're lying?" He knelt down to her height and took her hand. "Because people are afraid of what they don't understand, Emily. But we know what we're doing. We saw the strength that lay dormant within you. Don't ever let anyone make you doubt that." James, despite his skepticism, observed Samuel's determination and Emily's wonder. He began to understand that what was happening went beyond logic and reason. "Perhaps," he murmured, "there are things in this world that money and science cannot explain." The ordeal of the outside world forced the family to rally around Emily and Samuel. They had to protect their privacy while facing curious glances, harsh criticism, and budding jealousies. But every small step Emily took strengthened their unity and their faith. This period of stress also taught Emily the value of patience and resilience. Every movement, every smile, every step forward was not only a step toward physical healing, but also a step toward the emotional maturity that only such an ordeal could forge. Samuel knew the road ahead was long. The outside world was unforgiving, but Emily's biggest challenge wasn't walking in front of the cameras or convincing the skeptics. Her real challenge was believing in herself, despite fear and doubt. And so, the paralyzed little girl became a symbol of fragile but resilient hope, illuminating the lives of those around her while challenging the limits of what was possible. Over the next few weeks, a unique bond grew between Emily and Samuel. Each session was no longer just a physical workout, but a moment of sharing and trust. Emily, who had once felt imprisoned by her body, now discovered the strength of her will, guided by the man who had seen beyond her limits. One afternoon, after a series of small exercises in the living room, Emily sat down on the mat, breathless but radiant. "Samuel, why are you helping me?" "Why you?" she asked, the curiosity and innocence of childhood shining in her eyes. Samuel sat across from her, his hands on his knees, his gaze distant. "Emily," he began softly, "a long time ago, I too was a child who had lost hope. My family, my loved ones. I lost them due to circumstances I couldn't control. I learned that life can strike us without warning, but the strength of our hearts can always guide us." Emily listened to him, fascinated. She had heard of loneliness, sadness, and fear, but never with such sincerity. "So, you want to help me because you know what it's like to feel helpless?" Samuel nodded slowly. "Exactly. I know what it's like to feel like all is lost. And I want you to know that nothing is ever lost as long as you believe in yourself. That's why I'm here." James, watching from the doorway, felt his heart sink. He had underestimated this man, whom he had previously seen as a mere beggar. Samuel was not just a healer for Emily, he had become a guide, a model of courage and patience. Elizabeth approached and said softly, "Samuel, thank you, for everything you do for Emily, and for us." Samuel bowed his head in humility. "I'm just awakening what's already in her. All the credit goes to Emily." That day strengthened the bond between the child and the beggar. Emily began to regard Samuel as a confidant, almost like a member of the family. And Samuel, in turn, saw in Emily not just a student, but an inspiration, a reminder that hope could be reborn even in the darkest situations. However, Samuel knew the challenges weren't over. Emily's physical recovery would only be part of her journey. Her mind and heart also needed to learn to overcome fear and uncertainty. And in that process, the trust and bond they shared would be essential to overcoming the obstacles ahead. This budding bond between Emily and Samuel not only affected the child and the beggar, it also transformed James and Elizabeth, teaching them patience, humility, and the importance of believing in the impossible. One autumn morning, as the red and gold leaves swirled in the wind, Emily awoke with a strange fatigue. Her legs, which had been responding with more strength each day, felt heavy, and a fever was beginning to rise. Elizabeth, worried, took her temperature and frowned. "James, his temperature is high. We need to call a doctor," she whispered, her voice trembling. James grabbed his phone and immediately called Dr. Harrison. A few minutes later, the doctor came in, examined Emily, and shook his head. "It's a viral infection. Nothing serious if we act quickly, but she needs to rest. Her progress could be slowed." Samuel entered at that moment, silent but attentive. Emily looked up at him, her hands trembling. "Samuel. I'm scared. I'm going to lose what I've gained," she said, her voice choked with fever. Samuel knelt down beside her and gently took her hand. "Emily, listen to me. Your body is strong, but it needs rest and care. We will fight this disease together. The strength you have awakened will not disappear." James, despite his doubts, watched Samuel intervene. The man, with surprising calm, guided Emily through breathing and concentration exercises tailored to her condition. He also advised the Whitmores on natural remedies and attentive care to support her recovery. The following days were critical. Emily, feverish and weak, refused to give in to fear. Samuel, watching over her, combined care, encouragement, and soothing gestures. Every little smile from Emily, every flick of movement in her legs was a victory. Elizabeth, moved, looked at Samuel with gratitude and admiration. "James, he's not just a healer. He's an angel to Emily." James remained silent, but he felt his prejudices crumble. The man he had first considered a beggar had shown knowledge, patience, and an ability to inspire trust that surpassed anything he had ever known. Finally, after several days of intensive care, Emily began to regain her strength. Her fever subsided, and the first natural movements in her legs returned. Her first step after the illness was hesitant, but when she managed to stand up and walk toward Samuel, the room exploded with joy. Samuel smiled, but his eyes reflected deep satisfaction. You see, Emily? Even in the face of fear and weakness, your inner strength prevailed. That's the real miracle. This ordeal strengthened Emily's resolve, her parents' respect and admiration for Samuel, and solidified their belief that true power lies in perseverance and self-belief. The test had been harsh, but it had shown that their journey was not just physical, but deeply emotional and spiritual. Morning dawned on the Whitmore mansion like a burst of pure light. Emily, more confident than ever, stretched in bed, feeling every fiber of her legs respond to her commands. The weeks of work with Samuel had paid off. Every movement, every tentative step, had been a step toward freedom, and today, she felt ready to go further. Samuel entered the room with a calm and confident smile. Emily, today I want you to walk alone, without support. No wheelchair, no hands to help you. Emily nodded, her heart pounding. I can do it. I know it, she whispered, more to herself than to Samuel. James and Elizabeth watched from the hallway, holding their breath. James, usually so rational and self-possessed, felt his emotions overwhelm him. Each step Emily took would represent more than a physical advancement, it was proof that courage and perseverance could overcome limitations. Emily stood slowly, her legs shaky but strong. Samuel remained at a distance, his eyes fixed on her, ready to intervene if necessary. Then, with renewed determination, Emily took several steps toward the door, each step more assured than the last. Elizabeth burst into tears, running to her to hug her. Oh, Emily, you really walk. James, with tears in his eyes, joined her and whispered. I can't believe I see you walking, my daughter, my miracle. Emily smiled, her face beaming with joy and pride. I did it, thanks to Samuel, and thanks to you who encouraged me. Samuel, humble, withdrew to a corner of the room and observed the Whitmore family with satisfaction. The real miracle is not just walking. It's finding self-confidence, joy, and freedom again. The following days were filled with laughter, games, and small challenges. Emily ran around the garden, played hide-and-seek with her parents, and experienced the life she had never fully experienced. The Whitmores realized their world had changed, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. The bond between Emily and Samuel was now unbreakable. The child had found a mentor, a friend, almost a family member. Samuel, for his part, had rediscovered the satisfaction of guiding and inspiring a life, as he had done before in other places and with other children. This transformation wasn't just a physical miracle, it had reawakened hope, faith, and love in the hearts of everyone around Emily. The Whitmore family had learned that even in the face of the darkest challenges, perseverance, trust, and kindness could bring about a complete rebirth. The sun was setting over the Whitmore mansion, tinting the sky with shades of orange and purple. Emily ran through the garden, free and full of life, her laughter floating through the air like musical notes. Samuel watched her from the doorway, a faint smile on his face, but a gentle melancholy in his eyes. The time had come. Samuel knew he had to go. His mission with Emily was accomplished, and other children and families needed his help elsewhere. But the bond he had formed with Emily and the Whitmores would remain in his heart forever. Elizabeth approached him, her eyes shining with gratitude and emotion. Samuel, we can never thank you enough, you changed our lives. Samuel bowed his head humbly. I only awakened what was already in Emily. She is courageous, strong, and determined. All the credit goes to her. Emily ran towards him, her hair flying behind her. Samuel, you have to stay. I don't want you to leave, she said, her voice trembling but full of sincerity. Samuel bent down to be at her height, placing his hands on her shoulders. Emily, I will always be with you, in your heart and in your strength. Every step you take, every smile you offer. I will be there, invisible but present. James, despite his rational and distant nature, felt his eyes moisten. He reached out to Samuel. Thank you, for everything. We will never forget what you did. Samuel squeezed her hand one last time, then turned back to the door. The real miracle is not just walking, it's keeping moving forward, believing, and loving. Take care of your daughter and yourselves. As he walked away, Emily watched him, her heart heavy but filled with gratitude. The little girl who had once been trapped inside her body was now free, thanks to the inner strength he had awakened. The Whitmores stood together in the garden, hand in hand, gazing at the horizon. A new life was beginning for them, a life filled with joy, laughter, and hope. Emily walked with confidence, a living symbol that even in the face of the darkest trials, perseverance, faith, and love could create miracles. And as the sun sank behind the hills, a certainty settled in their hearts: the story of Samuel Carter and their daughter would never truly end. It would live on through every step, every smile, and every dream fulfilled. The story ends on a note of hope and complete transformation, highlighting inner strength, faith, and family love.